Further ado, we're going to bring John Siskel and Greg Jacobs out for the Golden Thumbs. They're the co-director, co-producers.
That's John. Thank you.
Give this to John.
Thank you. Thank you. This is great. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. So you got both got the thumbs from Roger, and everyone doesn't get a reception like this, I want you to know.
Well, we really appreciate it.
And because you don't know this, because this is your first time, this is a casting of Roger's thumb.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
made by
yes.
the same people who make the Academy Awards.
Wow, that's amazing.
All right, so we're going to take these away, and but we'll give them back to you at the end, and you're going to join us on stage, sit somewhere near the center,
Sure, okay.
while we bring out Kevin Coval, who started Louder Than a Bomb. See? Joining us to ask questions will be Grace Wang from Toronto. Who is also a poet, not in this movie, but Grace is also a poet. I think she's a poet, a lawyer, and a film critic. But joining us on stage, Lamar Jorden from Steinmetz. Charles Smith from Steinmetz. Shakira McNight from Steinmetz. Kevin Harris from Steinmetz. And Jesus Lark from Steinmetz. Are there enough chairs? We need one more. We need one more chair. And what let me just say this, because I'm getting so nervous. Watch this, please. Let's not go down into the orchestra pit. Okay. What we're going to do is have a brief Q&A, and then you'll see them perform their poetry.
Did you mention that there's only 2 mic vendors, so if they're going to ask questions, they need to come down to
Okay. Because we need so many of the mics on stage, have a seat, please. Because we need so many, unless you want to stand and answer questions like this, because we have only a few mics, when we do the Q&A, we want you to come. I think we'll have a mic here and a mic there, and so instead of finding you in the audience, you have to come down to answer questions. All right, first, let's get started with either Greg or John telling us why you made this movie.
Well, it was a complete accident. Actually, I happened to be driving down Clark Street in Chicago in the spring of 2005 with my wife, and we drove past a club called the Metro. And there was the marquee on the Metro that night read, "Louder Than a Bomb High School Poetry Slam Finals tonight." And there was a line of kids all down the block of all shapes and sizes and colors. And it was such a strange thing to see that kind of diversity on the north side of Chicago on a Saturday night among high schoolers, and the fact that they were all there to see poetry, which is not something I remember doing for fun as a high school student. And it also meant that there were kids who were on stage doing poetry in front of their peers, which is absolutely the last thing in the world I would have wanted to have done with my awful, awful poetry that I wrote when I was in high school. So it was just like a fleeting glimpse, but it was like, that's a really interesting thing. And so I came back and mentioned it to John the next week, and it kind of got started from there.
The other thing that is, I know that you probably started out with more students. Tell me how you ended up choosing these students from Steinmetz.
Well, once we identified and met Kevin Coval and started talking about filming Louder Than a Bomb, there were about 40 teams competing at that time, and Kevin helped us narrow it down to about a dozen. And we spent about a year going out to the high schools, meeting the coaches, talking to the poets, and just observing, even without a camera. And then over the course of that year, narrowed it down to the 4. And so in fact, we didn't have any other teams. We only had the 4 teams that we followed. Yeah.
That's very unusual for a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
Kevin, why did you start? Tell us how this whole Louder Than a Bomb thing came about.
Yeah, we started in 2001, and a couple things were happening in the country and in the city. The towers had just fallen, and also in the city of Chicago, they were trying to pass an anti-gang loitering law. And I'd been teaching in Chicago in creative writing classes for a little while, and I was working with other poets and educators. And in that moment of fear, we wanted to respond with this culture of hope. We knew collectively probably hundreds of young people who were writing on their own. And in Chicago, which is radically segregated based on race and class, we wanted to bring folks together so they could hear and listen to one another. And so that's where the idea came from. And we started in a basement with a couple of teams, and now we just celebrated our 11th year, and we had 72 teams from all over the city, about 650 kids, you know. So.
This question, it can be Jesus, it can be Kevin, Shakira, any one of you. When someone mentions the word poet, your face doesn't immediately come to mind. Tell me how would you respond to that statement I just made?
Well, I don't think that, contrary to popular opinion, there is or there should be a particular face or a particular appearance from someone when you hear the word poet. I think anyone can be a poet, and I think that's part of the thing that makes poetry so beautiful, that anybody can pick it up and that anybody can be successful with it. And then it comes down to what you determine as success for a poet, you know, which probably isn't a large ladder as is. So I think I would respond to them with, well, what do you think a poet should look like, you know?
And actually, that was just a provocative question, because when I think of poet, I do see your face.
Thank you.
Grace, do you have a microphone? Because I know she has some questions.
Well, this was actually my first time seeing the film, having a chance to see the film, and throughout the film, I was having difficulty breathing, literally. You know, I would say the film actually rendered me breathless, and it was just every time one of you guys are on stage and just, you know, like leaving your heart out there in verse, and sort of like that. Like, I really love that there was a shot of when Nova was on stage and she was wearing a little heart pendant. And then I just sort of felt like that was what you guys were doing all the time, every single time that you were on stage. So just, first of all, congratulations, such a great achievement, and just documenting such a, just art and truth and life. I mean, it sounds really cliche, but that's kind of how I felt watching the film, so
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that I've seen the film probably 200 times, and I never noticed that she's wearing a heart pendant. So I'm the
I'm a
least.
girl, so I noticed that's the first thing I noticed.
I'm the least observant person on the planet, apparently.
And I guess I just have a general question for. At first, I was going to ask, like why you made the film, but I guess it's kind of obvious once you've seen a performance like this, you just, want to document it. But I guess my question is, we all obviously all have a love for poetry, and sort of why we're all here on this stage. And I just wonder what each one of you, what your relationship with poetry is, and what does it mean for you personally, and what role does it play in your life, and how has making this film or being part of this film affect that relationship? So if we can just, if everyone want to say a little something.
I was an English lit major, so I love poetry. I'm not a writer of poetry, but I think in doing the film now, it really has given me an appreciation for what these guys do. And in particular, Kevin and I were talking about it last night, the high school slam community. There's something about listening to what young people have to say that I think is very powerful. So I really have come to appreciate and love what these guys are doing.
I was particularly touched by Monica later in the film, who said that she was thinking of dropping out of the class, and she didn't think that she would be able to write or do poetry until she saw you guys perform, and you were an inspiration to her. And I was wondering, Shakira, as the only female in the group, tell us a little bit about your experience.
It can be challenging sometimes. I think I told Robbie Q that sometimes I feel like the only guy on the group. Because as you saw the film, everybody cried at least once.
Wow.
But I grew up with boys, my brothers, and then I have a lot of guy cousins, so it wasn't a huge transition. And like they show me things, and I show them things. So it's a family. It's all love, family.
Big C, tell us about that crying.
I cried, man. I don't know. At the time, I couldn't hold it back, man. I felt hurt, man. And I guess I'm a poet anyway, so I'm emotional. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Kevin, are you the one who had problems completing things at first?
Yes.
Tell her. I actually can relate to that, because I'm a writer as well, and I started a lot of good things, and Roger told me that I don't finish. So tell me how you got over that, what are you working on now, and are you finishing?
Okay, the answer to that question is yes. I finish a lot of my materials nowadays because of this movie. I was like, dang. Okay, now I got to start doing work. But the tough part about writing at the time was I was like all over the place in high school creatively. I was in the marching band, debate team. I was like all over the place. And trying to sit there and write a poem and wanting to move at the same time was like very difficult. So sometimes I'll have to like lock myself in a room and just be up all night just trying to put words together, you know what I mean? But I got over it over the movie. Yeah. But I end up, I don't know. It's tough, but I create a lot of things and I finish a lot of them now. Yeah.
And Jesus, I was wondering, does your martial arts help you? Because physical movement is actually very good for creating and for writing. Does your martial arts help you with that?
I think martial arts definitely, it does help me with with everything that I've ever done. Just in martial arts, what you try to do is you just try to, you try to look at everything, and that's one of the things as a martial artist, is a physical and a mental aspect of martial arts in general. and I like using everything that I've ever learned, that the martial arts teaches, because the martial arts taught me how to speak, out. Without martial arts, I don't think I'd be a public speaker. I think I'd be very shy. Without martial arts, I probably wouldn't be as confident as I am, confident enough to get on stage. So, of course, without martial arts, because I grew up in it, so without it, I wouldn't be the person that I am right now. So, of course, whenever I'm creating, I always try to incorporate everything, every single event that has made me who I am. It's my work.
Great answer. Lamar, I was kind of walking down the backstage when they were telling what's happening to everyone. So if you don't mind, we'll just go down. What's happening in your life now after this?
Well, mine is pretty long, but the credits said I was a student at Wilbur Wright College, which I was at the completion of the film. Now I'm a student at Kennedy King College, which is also a city college in Chicago. I'm transferring to Columbia College probably next year, where I will be majoring in broadcast journalism, studying to be a sports analyst. And right now I'm a part of a AmeriCorps program called Public Allies, which is an AmeriCorps program that's placed in 37 sites around the country. And they place you at a partner organization, at a nonprofit agency that focuses on public service. And you get a lot of training about how to be a nonprofit professional while doing your public service. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm helping youth. I'm a facilitator. I teach youth poetry as well as life skills and what I think it means to be a responsible male of color nowadays. So, and I still find time to write when I can. So.
Mine ain't really that long. After the movie, I was trying to find my way. I had dreams of being a police officer at once, but then I found out there was a big physical aspect to that, so that was out of the question. I found my place at culinary school. I currently attend Le Cordon Bleu. Trying to be an executive chef one day. So, yeah.
I'm currently employed with IDEX Laboratories, which is a veterinary lab. I hope to be starting school at Triton College in the fall to study business. And in addition to all of that, I'm hoping to pursue music more so, and we've all been collaborating with that. And that's about it.
Well, after high school, I immediately got into the workforce because of my parents and whatnot. But after a year of doing that, I was like, this sucks. I want to create. So, forget this job. And I invested all the money I saved into my music. In high school, I was always the musician, the drummer boy kid in the school. And poetry to me was like that missing link to what I was trying to get out, convey to people. So once I put words to my music, I felt better about myself. I was not shy anymore, and things were cool. So after high school, I just basically got into music. I worked with a lot of different people like R. Kelly, Jeremiah in the studio back in Chicago. So I'm an engineer, a producer, songwriter, and all those things like that. So be on the lookout for me and stuff.
After last year, actually, me and Lamar co-coached Steinmetz together. We kind of gave Sloan a break, so me and Lamar stepped in and we coached Steinmetz. Big C was coaching at LTAB too, so all of us, we do go back and coach and try to give back, to the community that taught us poetry really. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm a full-time karate teacher. I'm the primary children and special needs instructor for children ages 3 we go all the way up to about, I think the oldest student we have is like 81. But you're never too old to start karate, and you're never too old to start karate. And I mean, right now it's just spending all my time and energy, helping kids get more confidence, self-confidence, and become better people.
Tell us what you're doing.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Well, I was going to give an update about the festival. So you saw in the film Year 8, and we just celebrated our 11th year, and we have 72 teams now, like I said. And because of the film, I think, of course, we've garnered a lot more interest in Chicago and now around the country. And so we just got back, actually, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where for the first time ever, yeah, big up to Tulsa, Midwest in the building all day. And we started a Louder Than a Bomb Tulsa there. And I think one of the things that the film has certainly taught me is that the model that we are using in Chicago is transferable to other cities who have young people who need to be heard. And also in Tulsa, like anywhere in America, there's a history of racial terror. And for the first time, I think in a long time, we brought together sides of that city that normally don't communicate. And we were last night, we were at the Independent Media Center, and we did a reading there. And I officially invited a team from Champaign-Urbana to come to Louder Than a Bomb, the festival. But I also want to put out there that I think Champaign-Urbana is ripe for their own Louder Than a Bomb. And I feel that way about every... I feel that way about every city, I think, maybe in this country and maybe in this world. All of us have the desire to be heard and to tell stories. And I think, Greg and John have done an incredible job of telling the story. And I think for all of us have shown us the power of that in other places. And so I think that's what we're up to.
I did also want to just update everyone on where the film is at. So we're about to transition into the theatrical run of the film. May 18th through the 26th, we'll be in New York at the same time in Chicago, and we'll be rolling the film out all across the country. So we encourage you to join us on Facebook, to tell your friends, to be on the lookout for it. And also in the fall, the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN, has purchased the documentary, and it'll be one of the 12 films in Oprah's documentary club. So be on the lookout for it.
And if the question was where are we now as filmmakers, here is really about as good an answer as we can give, because we've been having, we've been having such a wonderful time with this film. We've made literally hundreds of television documentaries. This is our first feature documentary, and it's been an incredible experience, kind of navigating through what is a model now that nobody knows what the right way to do this is. So navigating our way through that, people a lot of times ask, well, what's the next thing? What are you working on? And I always try to explain it's kind of like being in a really good relationship, where when you're in a really good relationship, you're not sitting there thinking, well, who else can I hook up with? So right now we're having a blast with this, and we don't have eyes for anything else at this point, which is economically suicidal, but really, really fun. So.
Great. Okay, we're going to open the floor to questions, and if you can walk down this morning to the microphones, that will be, we have one here, the red one that Ignati calls the clown nose microphone. And where's the other microphone? Oh, right over here. So either come down this aisle or there.
No problem.
I have to tell you, tell me your name.
Mike Milan.
Mike was here last year for the first time at Ebertfest playing hooky from school. This year he's not playing hooky, but
Yes,
he came,
actually,
but
I
he
am.
came back.
I lied. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to be disappointed, but yes, I'm skipping about 8 days of school.
Oh, don't say that. Okay, all right.
These are the kind of lessons we're trying to teach with the film.
Real quick comment, then my question. My comment would be, back home in Oregon, I was a 4-time consecutive poetry slam champion. I won first place 4 times in a row. And my very last poetry slam competition, right before I graduated, I lost miserably. I wanted my big poem to go out with a bang, and I really was just ranting. And it wasn't very good. I lost, and that loss really made me shake my faith in poetry. And I haven't written a poem since then. But after watching this film, my faith in poetry kind of was rekindled a bit, and now I want to write again. I really, really appreciate the filmmakers and the poets and Roger for having this film, for bringing this back into my life, because I'm feeling I want to write. So, as far as my question goes, poets, what do you use as influence to help you write? Would that be music or news stories about injustice and racism? That's what I use a lot. I use a lot of news stories about racism and segregation, things like that are still happening in this country. I use a lot of that to fuel my poetry. I was kind of wondering what you guys use to help fuel yours. And thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I think a lot of my poems, what inspired me was the desire to win louder than a bomb. But but that in turn did lead me to, like reading up on more news stories around the world and finding things to write about that I felt would score high, but in turn got a lot of, deep touching poetry out of. So, yeah, I think I initially started wanting to write those poems for the wrong reason, but I think a lot of good came out of them, and it mostly just came from me. Like a shooter piece, I had to do a lot of research to make sure I was accurate with the facts that I put into the poem. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about accuracy or relevancy or how long this poem would be relevant. I was just thinking, this is gonna get a high score. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think it started for the wrong reasons, but I think a lot of good, deep touching poetry did come out of, the long hours of studying that I was doing in turn to write those poems. So
Poetry for me was more so like a search engine. When I close my eyes, I would say you're writing to explore more about yourself. So if you can stop writing about the exterior things and focus internally and just close your eyes and just what comes to mind, then that can also be a tool you can use.
I use personal experiences. I find that that my poems are more sincere, and it's easier to leave my heart on the stage when I'm saying something that's really close to my heart. That I can honestly feel because I've been through or I've seen firsthand. So my I have done persona poems and stuff like that, but I think that my best work comes honestly from something that I hold dear to me.
I mean, I think for me it starts with the people around me. Like, the team really inspired me a lot because I wasn't really a good poet until I walked into the poetry room and met these guys.
Oh, sorry. Personally, for me, I think when I write, is like Jesus said, it's usually based on a personal experience, or it's about something that I feel like a large scale of people needs to hear. And it seems like, that's your motivation for writing, right? So, yeah, I mean, just go with the flow.
We're definitely more alike than different. It's it's a beautiful thing. I'm done.
I wanna echo just some of what they said as an educator. Is that I took so much of Louder Than a Bomb is rooted in the Chicago tradition of literature, and one of our greatest teachers was Gwendolyn Brooks, and I had the opportunity. Yeah, you could definitely give it up for Gwendolyn Brooks. I had the opportunity to be mentored by one of her mentees, and so I saw her a number of times before she transitioned. And one of the things she would tell young writers is that your responsibility is to tell the story that's in front of your nose. And so I think a lot of the work that we do in Louder Than a Bomb is representing or representing the places we come from that are not typically heard from and of. And so, if you're from Oregon, we don't hear a lot of stories about what it's like to be young in Oregon. And so I think those become essential for your own poetry.
Don't forget the internal stuff. All right.
Hi, inspiring film. as a film critic, I get flattered when people come up to me and say, "Oh, you write really well," but compared to you guys, I suck. You know. And you guys are actually doing writing. When some of us write, it's on the computer. You know. You guys are actually shorthand, writing it down. It's very organic. It's touching. Quick question for all of you guys. Who is a poet? Who's your favorite poet or poet you'd like to recommend, traditional or contemporary? Who comes first to your mind?
I'm gonna say Pablo Neruda, only because Pablo Neruda not only does his poetry in English, it's really well written and it's beautiful, but when you read it in Spanish, it's like it kind of blows your mind because some words, like some descriptions, just like you really can't put in words unless it's Spanish, to me. So I mean, like the way that he words stuff is just it's beautiful, and I mean, I hope one day that I can just write a piece that can be as beautifully worded, and just out there as Pablo Neruda. So he's my favorite poet.
I would have to keep it Gil Scott Heron, yeah, because he ain't do it. But aside from that, like I said, I also pull from music a lot, like composers like Mozart, I would just sit there and just listen to the entire, movement, just, okay, now put a rap to it, type thing. And trying to match the words with those melodies is a beautiful journey.
I would probably say Maya Angelou. To go back to your comment, I've never heard your work, but I wouldn't say that it sucks,
Me
I think everybody is different, so if yours is different from ours, how can it suck if it's different, But Maya Angelou would probably be my favorite poet.
Kyra, too late. We're already putting it on the poster.
Like I said, when I first started, like I just walked into the room and saw the guy. So for me, I kind of like started with slam poetry, and actually I grew up watching Def Poetry Jam. I don't know why that counts with that, but that was the show. I would say for me it'd be a poet like Black Ice. His energies on the stage kind of inspired me to put my heart out there.
Both with my writing and my performance, I've always drawn inspiration from other performance artists of this time. I've definitely, read, the Gwendolyn Brooks and the Maya Angelou's, but I've always been able to look at other poets of this time and be like, wow, I want to write a poem like that. So I've always drawn inspiration from the Bo Sears or the Saul Williamses or the Joshua Bennett's or, the Brooke Youngs. I've always drawn inspiration from people, and a lot of these people I've met in real life, and I've always been able and been humbled in their presence because they do work very similar to what I do, or I do work very similar to what they do, and I hope to inspire, I hope to, reach their level of writing and performance one day, and that's what has always driven me, and I think that's a big part of what will always drive me as a writer and a performer.
I just want to add one more thing. Adam Gottlieb has to be one of the most amazing writers that has ever been in LTAB. And I mean, like that Poet Breathe Now piece, that right there did inspire me to write a lot of pieces, just because that was the first time I ever heard something done just like that, and it was it was kind of blew my mind. So I would say Adam Gottlieb.
Jesus, I was just going to ask a question about Adam Gottlieb. Is that, Lamar, you were saying without Louder Than a Bomb, you would have never met someone like Adam Gottlieb. I was so impressed with him. Is that guy for real?
Yes.
He is.
Yes, he
one day
is.
he's gonna probably find world peace or something. I just loved him. Is he what was he like?
I'm not sure if he's for real now. Actually, after the film ceased filming, I think Adam is really hard to get in touch with, and I actually got in touch with him at the 2009 National Poetry Slam, which is the adult poetry slam, which is the biggest poetry slam in the world. Louder Than a Bomb is the biggest youth poetry slam, but the National Poetry Slam is the biggest poetry slam in the world. And he goes to Hampshire University now, and he was there representing I'm not sure which town he was representing, but it was somewhere in the Northeast. And we got a good time to catch up and perform together and, just feed off of each other and hang out. And I haven't seen him since. So I'm not sure if he still exists now.
I think he's.
Shows up when his presence is required in the world.
I think he is. He's like something like you'll see in a movie where like everybody's just he comes, he rocks the stage, and all of a sudden you won't see him until like the stage is empty and someone's needed to be there. Like he just appears out of nowhere. I mean, hanging out with Adam is really cool because we all rap and sing and do music. And I remember like when I first met him, we were all in like a rap circle, a cipher, and he pulled out a flute. And then I was sitting here and I was like, he pulled out, cause I was like, did he pull out a flute? I had to double take that, and then like I think somebody was beatboxing, and then immediately the guy just started with the flute, perfect melody and everything, and I was like, wow, this guy he is something else. He's for real, It's like, who pulls out a flute in a rap song?
But the
You know what? This is actually live streaming. Adam, if you're out there, make sure you get in touch with your fellow Louder Than a Bomb crew. Other questions?
Hi, my name's Terry. I'm new to the area. This is my first Ebertfest, my first slam. I want to say, wow. So new eyes on the subject here. As a child psychiatrist, I can see you're putting us out of business. You're doing your own work. You're putting words to feelings, like, couldn't happen with professional relationships, so it's just awesome.
Oh, they still got a bunch of issues though, don't.
But I gotta say, I saw so much great work. How isn't it just wrong to grade it? So my question is, how can you score this stuff? Isn't it just wrong? And then on the flip side, have any of you judged, after being on your side, can you judge this stuff?
That's a good point. Something that the film didn't show, but we do every year, is that before the competition begins, we get all the students who are participating together in an event we call Crossing the Street. And that's where they just come as competitors for the first time to see one another. And we tell them when all 650 poets are gathered in the same space that we brought them there under a ruse. And we tell them that actually the slam is a lie. It's a trick that was invented by a Chicagoan, a construction worker / poet named Mark Smith, who stood up on top of a bar table in the 80s and gave his other construction worker friends scorecards to make poetry more like a sport, because we are in America and we like sports. And it's a trick that worked. It's a trick that brought more and more people to listen to people tell stories in public space. And so the first event that we do with Louder Than a Bomb is to tell them that the slam is actually a joke, literally a joke. And the 5 judges don't, they really don't know that much. And the best poets typically lose the slam. And so we try to do that work, although then there are people like Lamar who continue to take it very seriously.
On the second part where you said, can we actually judge? I think judging it's probably the hardest thing to do in a slam, because all these scores are they're subjective. It's very hard to tell somebody your story, put a score on a story. You can't do that. This is something that you feel. This is something it's very hard to do. And I have judged, and it's kind of like a learning process. While you're just sitting there, you're looking at the scores, and you're like, okay, well, you kind of want to, be fair, and then all of a sudden a poem hits you, and then you just give it a 10, and you just get so into it that we call it score creep. All of a sudden, everyone just gets 10s because these poems are they're serious, and we try to keep the scores as even as possible, but there's always something that's gonna force you to keep on wanting to score higher, and it's very hard to do. It's one of the hardest things I had to do in slam. It's not slamming, it's actually scoring or watching other people slam. Because then you get all crazy when someone gets a bad score or a score that no one agrees with. So it's all subjective. So
Yeah, and I think in that sense it is very unfair to put numbers to points because, you know, then it does give birth to attitudes like the one I had where I felt like the only possible outcome that would be acceptable from Loud and Bomb is to win. And in turn, you kind of lose sight of what the true goal of Loud and Bomb is. So I do think on the flip side, without the points, Slam wouldn't be as big, youth poetry wouldn't be as big, and these youth who are meeting each other wouldn't have turned my mic off. But they wouldn't have that opportunity to meet each other. So I do think the scores are very stupid. They're very, and I'm someone who I judged in this year's Loud and Bomb at the semifinals, and I would never claim to be, you know, an expert of poetry. So I do think the judges don't know anything, and it really comes down to, you know, it is really all very subjective, but I think that subjectiveness is very necessary for the goal of Loud and Bomb to achieve. So
I think it's a trick. I think the scores are just a trick to get people who have that, you know, competition mentality to a big open mic, because that's basically what it turns into if you take away the scores. Like, for us, you know, scores were, like, you feel good when you get a 10. Like, everyone's going to feel good when you get a good score. You're going to probably feel bad if you get a bad score. But the thing is, when you're listening to poetry, you don't only go to just your bout. You're there listening to everyone else's poetry, and you just fall in love with the whole poetry in whole. And it's like a big trick just to kind of get you in the door, just to open your ears and listen to other people. And then the idea of the point is not the point is the poetry really sinks in. And that's when, you know, it really sinks in. People do go out there, you know, wanting to win, wanting to get perfect tens, and, you know, they get tricked into just, you know, staying for the poetry. Even when we lost, you know, we came to every single bout. I've been on teams where we've lost, you know, and didn't even get to the semifinals, and I still went to every single bout because I was so excited just to be there and listen to everyone else's stories. So I mean, I think it's it's genius. It's honestly genius. At the same time, kids are gonna want that score. So.
One last thing about that, Robbie Q, who is the artistic director of YCA, I once heard him say that the best attitude to have in Loud and Bomb is to want to win, but don't care if you lose. So yeah, I think as long as youth come in with that type of attitude, everybody will leave happy.
And one other thing about the judging that Kevin often brings up is that the judges are kind of the lightning rod for the event. So, you know, you've got kids who are going up there and expressing themselves and exposing themselves and being incredibly vulnerable on stage. And you wouldn't want any kind of bad feeling or whatever directed at the people on stage. So you get to direct all the hostility at the judges. And they know what they're getting into when they get started. So every time the judge scores something that, you know, the audience believes is too low, everyone shouts at the judges, listen to the poem. And it's it's an amazing way of channeling whatever, you know, sort of any other feelings you might have about an individual's poem away from the kid that's on stage. And then you can just leave that space as a very safe place where the kids can tell their stories. And that's part of the brilliance.
How many other questions do we have here? Because we're going to take,
Bring them on.
Okay, because we're actually we only have time for 2 more questions. We'll go to this side.
Rock, paper, scissors.
For a question. And then, you know, if somebody has like a really, really hot question to ask. Okay, you have a hot question? Okay, all right. All right, she's in line. Okay. Oh. You know what, that's what we should do. We should say, what's your question? Score them, and then the one with the highest points get to ask the question.
I didn't know what I was getting in for.
All right. But since you're there first, you ask yours without any pressure.
Thank you for hope. I'm an art educator. This was a very emotional movie for me. I have the kindergartners through the 5th graders. And poverty is my enemy. I'm trembling. What I want is for you to teach me, because I felt like you were teaching me all through that film. And I want you to help me as a teacher, and I'm shaking all over, to reach my students. How do I help them have the confidence to find their voice, to be able to get inside themselves and express their own unique being, for them to exceed where they haven't been able to in their academics for whatever reason? Maybe they aren't getting support at home, whatever it is. How can I do that? I'd really appreciate some help.
That's a 10 question.
Give that question a 10 also.
Definitely. First, I'd like to say, as a teacher, and any other teachers that are in here, you have a very, very important role, because I think we're in school as kids more with the teachers than we are with our parents. If you really look at it, the time throughout the day, I would say to just listen beyond just speaking, because kids, you work with kindergartners and fifth graders, they'll tell you it's just about listening to what they have to say. And if you listen and encourage, I think that would help them bring their voice out more, because that's what Sloan did and Hood did with us. Before Louder Than a Bomb, I was very shy, very, very shy. Like, I would stay, they would go and, be with the crowd, and I would stay with Sloan and Hood. And they just listened, and it, gave me a safe place to speak. So that's what I would say.
And I would answer, yet again, it's more internal. It's like the more you know about yourself and your capabilities, because some people receive things through videos, audio, through dance, and if you can present all of these things in one room, you know what I'm saying, you can affect different people at the same time, because we all receive it differently.
Well, as I said, as someone who works with youth now myself, one thing I'm figuring out, at least about the school system in Chicago, is that it's a system that's not really set up to get to know your youth. It's not a real interpersonal, there are not too many interpersonal opportunities with the system that is set up in Chicago public schools. And the teachers work from a curriculum that's only based on judging, the work they give them. So their only task is to give a grade to something, and you never really get to know a youth and get to know what they're going through. And as Chicago said, I think that's often the most important part. I think youth often just want an ear. I think they definitely have the voice, and they don't always feel like they have the venue or the safe space to, speak their voice, and they often don't have their ear. And I think that's definitely always the first step, giving them that voice, letting them know that whatever they can't tell someone else, they can either tell you, or you can give them a journal and they can tell it to the journal. But I think it's definitely most important to give the youth an opportunity to speak their voice, because with the current system we have now, they just have to do work, and despite whatever they may be going through in their life, they're set up, they're judged on whether they pass or fail just based on their work alone. I think not often enough are they given a chance to really speak their mind about what's going on in their life, and I think that's very, very vital, especially at a young age.
That question is actually, it's a real hard thing to do, to help somebody out of their shell. And what I found is, because not only do I do poetry, I also paint a lot. I'm very into the arts, because creativity it's who I am. I'm a very creative person. So I think that there's always an outlet. You have to just kind of find, each kid's gonna have kind of like a different outlet. Even if you want to get to writing, kids are gonna get through. They have their own journey. They have to get through their certain ways. They have to go different routes sometimes. So the way that we went, instead of having just reading books and all this, we actually we were rappers, so we listened to a lot of hip hop. And then what happened was, when we went to Louder Than a Bomb, the connection between rapping and poetry was made. It's the same way that you can make a connection, by listening to, he was saying Mozart. When you listen to instruments, sometimes it can relax you. Sometimes it could, a song will just, make you feel, it expresses exactly how you feel at that moment. So whether it's through music, whether it's through like painting, whether it's through like it's more or less really I like to say trial and error, because I do teach kids who are very like to themselves, and the hardest thing to do is get them to socialize with everybody else on the mat, and it's something that I kind of have to find out each and every kid, because like they have a different code. Each kid has a different code, and it's like really sitting here and talking to the kid, understanding him to realize like what he wants to do and which direction he wants, and it's just a matter of guiding him there.
And like I just said, if you don't have the time to sit down with every kid, the better you know yourself, you could just present it, bam, like, and okay, I have a few, artsy dancers over here, and then they'll come to you like, I really enjoyed that, da-da-da, and you flip the script or something else, bam, you pull them in. So that's how you do it if you don't have the time to ration out to everyone and stuff.
I would probably just have to agree all around. For me, I work with youth too. Me and Lamar both did a summer program at an organization called Build Incorporated, where they help at-risk youth in the school system, in the Chicago public school system, and it just really take a person taking the extra step. One of the good things working at a program like that, we don't have to focus on the academic views of a child. We just focus on like what he needs and meeting the kid where he at. So just taking the extra step and the one to take the extra step.
Thank you for that question. That's going to be the last question. I can't think of another question where we're going to elicit any better answers than that. So let's give them a hand. And I want to thank you, John. I want to thank you, Greg and Kevin. And we're going to thank you, Grace, the poet from Toronto. Thank you, Lamar and Charles, Shakira, Kevin, Jesus. I finally learned all of your names, just remembered them. And let's have a little of a bathroom break, and then we'll come back for a performance. We're gonna